Hi, today I'm going to talk about how I made this custom art piece using a really wonderful game called Townscaper. Hi, welcome to Gray Lightning, my video blog about making things and playing games. And normally what I do here is I make things for gaming and gamers. But today's a little different because today I'm making something using a game. The game is my main tool. And that game is called Townscaper. Now, before I start talking about this, I want to give you a little bit of background. Right now, as I'm filming this, we're still in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and we're taking quarantining very seriously. But one of the few good things that have come out of it for us is that it's pushed us to follow through on a lifelong dream, which is to have a home by the water. And so that's what we did. We bought a house. We now have 2 places we can quarantine. And also, if you know me, you know I like things that are gray. Gray light May, gray lightning, gray with an E. And we're repainting the house gray, and we've named it Grateful, so that when we're there, we'll be thinking about how lucky we are. So now my picture. Townscaper is this really charming, simple, intuitive to use game that lets you build small to large town islands. And it's done by a Swedish developer named Oscar Ståhlberg. He did Bad North, which is another game that I really like, and I love his art style. So when I first saw a demo of Townscaper, I immediately saw the artistic potential in it. So in this image, all of the letters have been made individually in Townscaper and saved out as screenshots. Then I pull them together into Photoshop and combine them in a way that gets high enough resolution to do a print this large, but also combines them seamlessly. And finally, I had it printed by Great Big Canvas, which is one of the few services I know that can print and ship something this big. So I'll talk about that whole process from beginning to end in this episode. First, let me just show you the quality of this canvas print. The print is very accurate. I mean, you can see little tiles in the roof, you can see it in the pavement, the sides of the buildings, but also the charm of the picture itself. You have all these little details of the stairways down to the beach, all sorts of interesting building shapes, the little birds. So let's see what it's like to work in Townscaper. There's a grid that you can turn on and off, and it's a very irregular grid with irregular shapes. To create something, all you need to do is click on a space, and you start building the foundation. I'm leaving the sound on for this so you can see not only the animations, but the sound effects when you're actually playing with the game. There's a lot of logic here about how it builds, and you only learn about it by using it. You pick the color for the buildings, and you build, and sometimes unexpected things happen. So for example, I've just put these 2 buildings next to each other, and this little clothesline in between has appeared all by itself. You can click on the side of a building, and if there's no foundation, it puts down these stilts. All the little details that make it so charming are added algorithmically, like these birds. And now I'm going to scare the birds away. So those are the basics. Now I'm going to talk about how I used it to create the letters. So if you turn on the grid, it is expandable. It goes in all directions. It's very irregular, as I said. And the real challenge is to find a stretch of cells that are straight enough to do the letter you want to make. First, I lay out the basic shape, and then I'm going to have to double it so I have enough space that I can build a building and still have a way to walk past it. And I also made all of my letters about 13 cells tall, taller than wide, because I knew I was going to be looking at it on an angle, and I wanted the right proportions when it was tilted in this fashion. Once I was satisfied with the basic shape, then I could start building my little town. Now, for each letter, I didn't use all the colors. I picked 2 or 3 colors for each letter so that I have kind of a unified look to it. And then it's just playing. I mean, you have to put them on. I'm always making sure that there's a way to walk through the town from one end to the other. You can undo steps sequentially from the undo button on the right, but you can also right-click on any item and delete it. I wanted a variety of heights in my little towns, but I didn't want the height of a building to interfere with the look of the letter. I think my first letters were probably simpler than the later ones. As I learned more of the tricks of using Townscaper, I got a little more adventurous in the later letters. Also, Oscar, the developer, is taking input from users and constantly changing it, so some of the stuff that's available now wasn't even available when I started. A very recent addition is lighting, so he's added this little lighting widget here where you can change the location of the light source so that the shadows change, and also the amount of light, including night, and the lights come on. So this is a cool addition that I could use in future pictures I make. Also, I was using a default screenshot mechanism, but now there's one built right into the game, and you can actually set the resolution you want. So you could get much higher resolution today than I was able to get for my design. So you save a screenshot of each of the letters, and then you move to your photo editing software. I started by creating an image the size of my target piece, which is 60 inches by 20 inches, 150 dots per inch. Now I'm going to go back to one of my screenshots and pick a foreground color that matches kind of the mid-tone of the image. I'm going to use that color to fill my canvas. The challenge here is I need a place where I can assemble all of my letters in a way that I retain the reflections in the water but integrate them seamlessly. My first step for each of the letters is to crop the image to a more manageable size, but keeping all of those reflections. Now I want to get rid of the water, so I'm holding the Shift button and I'm clicking around with the magic wand to try to select the water, but leave the reflections. Then I'm going to say Select Inverse to get the opposite. When I pick Select and Mask, I get this window on the right that gives me a bunch of options, dials to play with, and ultimately an output mechanism where I say how I want to save it. I save them as PNGs, so I preserve the transparency. So I did the same thing for each of the letters, and now they're all ready to assemble in my project. You can also just select it directly from here and drag it onto the canvas and drop it. I had to scale my letters up about 50% to make them the right size. It didn't affect the quality of my print, but with that new screenshot capability, this is not an issue at all. You can make it whatever resolution you want. And zooming in, you can see that you have your reflections in the water, but it looks seamless. This approach lets you play with it endlessly to get the placement right. I also knew I'd need some tiny little towns to spread out amongst the other islands to make it look a little more realistic. So it's basically the same process. It's just a little trickier. I did 4 of them here on one screenshot, and to get that water out of the middle, you just have to be a little more careful, but it's the same process. You shift select all the water, then you select the inverse, then you select and mask. And then I just selected them one at a time, pulled them over, and dropped them onto my canvas. This is a project where it's really important that you take the time to name each one of your layers, because my experience is that I really played with these a lot to get an arrangement that I thought was pleasing. This is the final project. It has a lot of layers, and on the top I added a little vignette filter. I'm going to turn it on and off there so you can see it just darkens the edges to give it a little more depth. The last step is to export it, and I'm going to export it as a PNG, and this will show me the resolution I have so I can verify that it's what I expect. This is a very large print, and as I said, Great Big Canvas is the only place I found that did something this size. The cost of the print here is $117, but it's $60 to ship, so make sure you factor that in. When you upload your image, you have to verify that it is in fact an image you have the rights to print. which you do because you created it, and then in 2 weeks this will show up. It's beautifully finished on the back, and it's ready to hang either vertically or horizontally, as I'll hang it. The water theme really fits with my application. I really like the idea that from a distance it's a word, but that when you get in close there's all these little places to explore. Totally unique and only $200. I have lots of other projects for gaming and gamers. If you're interested, please subscribe to my channel.